My name's Christy, and this is Livin' La Vida Nomad. Today, I wanted to talk about 10 tips from 10 years of travel. So we've been traveling 10 years, and I've learned a few things over the years. So I wanted to go through 10 things I've learned in 10 years. It's been a lot more than 10, but I thought, 10 things, 10 years. So the first one is nothing goes exactly as planned. You can think you have things planned to the second and something will go wrong. And that's okay. So just remember that nothing goes exactly as planned. Things happen and we just need to work with them, work through them, and they'll work out. Number 2 is knowing the basics of the language helps a lot. So if you know, for example, that you're going to a Spanish-speaking country, learn the basics. Learn where's the bathroom, please, thank you. Just things like that. Even if you can't hold a full conversation, people's faces just light up when you can speak even just a little bit of their language. Sometimes they think that you speak a lot more and then they just start going and you're like, whoa, 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 wait, I only know that one thing. But the fact that you try and you are willing to try means a lot to them. And so try and learn a few phrases in their language before you get there. You'll have bad days even in paradise. Like, we all imagine, before we start traveling, we all imagine, sitting on the beach, having the perfect day, and nothing's going wrong. It's going to be the perfect life. But I am here to tell you that you are going to have crappy days even when you are in paradise. It is not all, sunshine and unicorns. But it's going to happen no matter where you are. So just remembering that bad days happen, and it's not going to be your whole life. The next one is the first couple of months are really hard when you first start full-time traveling. You're learning new things, and it's like a steep learning curve. So you're learning new things. You're learning if you're not going to rent in a place where there's like a car. So you're going to have to learn how to take the public transport. You're going to have to be learning a new language or how to communicate, figuring out where to buy groceries, where things are, how to do things. Things are going to be different, So like when we very first went to the Dominican Republic, it was vastly different than Canada. And I had this huge learning curve because, I had to figure out that I need this much for the month, but I can only take out this much every day. And so I had to figure out things as I went along. So the first few months are really hard, and there will be days where you think, I can't do this. Like, it would be so much easier just to go home. And you can do that. That's an option. But if you work through those really hard days, in a few months, you'll be like, oh, I've got this, So the first few months are really hard, and that's okay. Having more than one bank card or credit card is essential, especially like a bank card. So in a lot of the developing countries, if there's like a Visa symbol, like my Visa debit card looks very much like a Visa credit card. And so in the past, I've had my Visa debit card stolen a couple of times because they thought it was a credit card. They thought they could just go online and order what they wanted off of Amazon. They didn't realize that it was connected to my bank account. And so as soon as I realized that my bank card was gone, I just went and transferred all the money out, and then they couldn't buy anything. But having more than one card is essential. So I travel with 2 now. In Mexico, I used my card. We were just about to get on the bus to go to our next location, and I used my card, and the machine ate my card. And so I didn't have time to wait to get somebody to retrieve my card, and I don't know if they would have even. So I just got on the bus, and when we got to our new location, I called my bank, and they agreed to send me a card, but it was going to take a week or more to get to me. And so I was lucky because my son, who was 17, had a bank card, and he was able to get online access to his card, and so I was able to transfer him money, and we were able to take it out on his card and use cash that way. But so now that he's not traveling with me anymore, I've got a bank card from one bank, and then I've got another one from another bank. And so if anything happens to one or the other, I can just transfer money to the other account and use that bank card until a new one comes for this one, or until I go back to Canada to get a new one if that's what is required. So having more than one card is essential. Leave extra original copies with someone you trust at home, whether that be a friend or a family member, but original copies of birth certificates, of and color copies of your passports, your credit cards, front and back, things like that, as well as like I left a list of passwords for things. And my friend has a lockbox at her house, and it's all in that lockbox. And so somebody had taken my son's passport, and I needed the documentation to be able to get him, even to get an emergency travel document, you still need documentation to prove that that's that person. So I needed her to send me a notarized copy of his birth certificate, and I also needed her to send me a couple of other things, healthcare and things like that. Anyway, we were able to get the travel document from that. So having those things with somebody at home is a good idea. The next one is really important to me, but a lot of people don't think this way. So my next one is, most people are good and kind. Like in general in the world, yes, there are people who are horrible and do nasty, horrible things, but in general, the majority of people are good and kind and are great people. The next tip is getting to know the locals is really beneficial. So a really good example of this is my income had cut significantly, and so I couldn't afford to live where we were, and I went looking around in the city, and I looked around, and I found this place. It was not in a neighborhood that I would like to live in. It was a very poor neighborhood. It was, the main street was here, and then you kind of go off down this little tiny alley that only motorbikes could fit down, and it was in there. And all the houses are really close together. Nobody has a car. People are quite poor, but I could rent a house there for $100 a month, and it was okay. And it had bars, and it was safe. So I rented that house, and I really got to know my neighbors because we were all really close to each other. And then I got sick with dengue fever. And so my two oldest kids, my daughter was, I think she was about 14 or 15, and my son was 11 or 12. And he's now 10, but he was like 2 at the time, and might have been 3. Anyway, he was really young, and one of the neighbor ladies came over and said to my daughter, she said, "Where's your mom?" And my daughter said, "She's not feeling well." So she came in the gate, she opened the window to my room, and she felt my head, and she said, "Oh, you have a fever." And she went to the pharmacy, and she got me something for my fever. And she kind of organized all the neighbors. So I didn't know at that time that I had dengue. I just thought that I had a cold, or I wasn't really feeling good. But she organized one lady to do our laundry and somebody else to help my daughter with cleaning the house. And she just organized everything. I didn't even have to worry, you know. And I at this point, I didn't know this woman very well. I just knew her from the neighborhood. But because I made a point of getting out and getting to know my neighbors, that's how that worked. So anyway, I went to her afterwards and I said, how much do I owe you? How much do I owe all these people? And she said, nothing. You're our neighbor. You're our friend. You're our family. And I was like, wow. You know, it was really, really impressive, because I was sick for a long time with dengue. I was sick for over a month. And then a few years later, I just had my two little ones. My 6-year-old at the time was maybe a year old, and my other son was 4. He wasn't verbal. He was a lot of work. Anyway, and I lived in the bottom of this 2-story house, and I got vertigo really bad, and I could not get up. Like, even just lifting my head, the whole world started spinning. I felt like I was going to vomit. It was just an awful, awful situation. Anyway, we had these slatted windows, you know, and the lady who lived beside me, she came over and she was calling through the window. She was like, Christy, are you okay? And I was like, no, I can't get up. Her husband and another guy broke the door in for, to come in, and she checked on me, and you know, and she took my kids to her house every day. She'd come in the morning, take my kids, bring them back at night, put them to bed, and during the day she'd come and she'd feed, you know, try and feed me, make sure I had things to drink, make sure I was okay. And when this continued for like 2 days, her husband actually took me to the hospital. And so it was really good, you know. And again, I went and asked, you know, how much do I owe you? And she said, no, you're a friend, don't worry about it. So getting to know your neighbors, especially as a single parent, is really, really, really important. And getting to know people in the area, even if they're other expats, get to know them in the area and find out like whether everybody in the area uses WhatsApp or texting or whatever. Get their number and just kind of stay in contact with them, even if it's just to say hi, so that if something happens, you know, you can text that person and say, I'm in a really bad way, can you give me a hand? And usually people will, especially other expats, because they understand that you don't have family in the area. And usually even the locals will really help you out, because they understand that, you know, you're in a foreign country, you don't know anybody. So getting to know the locals and other expats is really, really beneficial to you. And number 10 was something that I really, really didn't expect before we set off traveling full time. I was assumed that our family was pretty close. I was pretty close with my kids. But once we started traveling full time, we became even closer. So I notice that my daughter and my son, they're now 20 and 20, she'll be 23 pretty soon. But they are super close, because they were really close when we traveled, partly because I'm not going to say they only had each other, because they had friends and stuff, but a lot of their friends spoke a different language and didn't really understand our culture, and so they really stuck together, and it really helped their cemented their relationship. And I noticed too with my little boys, because we travel a lot, they're quite content to just play with each other. They're happy to play with other kids as well, but if we are, like right now we're in lockdown, and they're content to just play with each other. I'm not going to say that they don't ever argue, but they do really appreciate each other's company. And it's great because I noticed that people who don't travel full time, their kids have a little bit different dynamic of relationship with each other. So your family will get really, really close, and it's a great thing. So, and I think part of the getting closeness is because when you're traveling, you're really relying on each other a lot for everything, you know, because you don't have your family around and you don't have a giant network of friends, and, you know, so you really rely on each other. And so you tend to get even closer, which is really, really cool. So those are 10 things that I've learned from 10 years of traveling. And I really hope that they're beneficial to you and you can kind of put them into use when you start traveling full time, and it will help your travels a bit more, and maybe you won't have to take 10 years to learn those things. So thanks for joining me. Hey, thanks for watching. I really appreciate your support. Join me next week for our next episode. If you have any topics that you want me to discuss or cover, send me a DM on Instagram or a message on our Facebook page. Both are Living La Vida Nomad. And there's links at the end of the video as well. So send me a message. Let me know what you want to hear about, what you want to learn about, and I will for sure cover it at some point. See you next time.